Hey guys, tonight you find yourself standing ankle deep in cold mud beneath the shadow of a medieval town wall long before sunrise has managed to decide whether it wishes to appear at all. The stone beside you is slick with mist, the straw scattered near the gate is damp and sour smelling, and smoke from early hearths curls above the rooftops beyond the wall. Somewhere inside a bell sounds faintly through the darkness. Your boots are already heavy with mud, your fingers sting with cold, and a horse beside you exhales a white cloud into the winter air, while its owner mutters about tolls. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. A torch burns near the gatehouse, throwing orange light across iron hinges. Oak doors wet cloaks, and the tired faces of people waiting to enter. You probably would not last a week out here without becoming deeply attached to dry socks, assuming anyone has invented a pair worth owning. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like it, leave a comment telling everyone where you are listening from and what time it is there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shift your weight and listen to the slow creak of leather harnesses. Around you, merchants gather in small, sleepy clusters. One leads two pack horses carrying sacks of wool. Another guards wicker baskets covered with cloth, perhaps containing eggs, perhaps cheese, perhaps something that smelled better yesterday. A farmer waits with onions tied in bundles, while a woman in a fur-lined cloak keeps one hand firmly on a basket of geese that appear personally offended by the hour. The market has not opened yet, that matters. In many medieval towns, trade is not supposed to begin simply because two people happen to be awake, and one of them has turnips. Markets operate under privileges granted by kings, lords, bishops, abbots, or local authorities. A town may possess a charter allowing trade on particular days, sometimes at specified hours, and those rights can be surprisingly valuable. You can almost imagine the parchment stored somewhere safely inside the town, covered with formal writing and seals declaring that merchants may gather here each week. Such documents help protect the town's right to collect fees and regulate commerce. They also discourage neighboring settlements from casually starting rival markets nearby. No one can quite agree whether every trader understands the exact wording of such charters. Most probably care less about legal Latin than about whether the gate opens before their cheese freezes. A lantern moves along the wall. The gatekeeper has appeared. He wears a thick wool cloak and carries a ring of iron keys that clinks softly against his belt. Beside him stands another official with a small wooden board and a wax tablet. Their task is not simply to unlock the gate. They must notice who enters what they carry and what payment may be owed. Market tolls come in many forms. A trader may pay for bringing goods through the gate, for using a stall for crossing a bridge, or for selling particular animals and merchandise. The exact arrangements vary from place to place, which is wonderfully inconvenient if you are a merchant traveling between towns. The man ahead of you leads a mule loaded with 2 barrels. The official stops him. A quiet discussion begins. Hands gesture toward the barrels. Coins appear. The mule looks deeply uninterested in municipal finance. You wait. This is one of the less romantic truths of medieval commerce. Before bright cloth, spices, pies, animals, and noisy bargaining fill the square, there is paperwork, payment inspection, and waiting in the cold. Some traders attempt to avoid tolls by arriving through lesser paths or claiming exemptions. Monasteries, nobles, guild members, or particular communities may possess special privileges. Certain merchants can point to old rights allowing reduced fees or freedom from some charges. Others simply argue that tradition is timeless. The gatekeeper lifts the torch and examines a cart whose left wheel is cracked. A long one spoke. The driver insists it will survive the day. The wheel makes a sound, suggesting it has not agreed to this arrangement. You remember it. You have the feeling you will see that cart again. Behind you, more people arrive along the road. Their shapes emerge gradually from the mist: peasants carrying baskets, a boy guiding sheep, 2 traders wrapped in wet wool, and an old man with a bundle of wooden spoons tied across his back. The road itself is a mixture of frozen ruts, puddles, manure, and churned earth. Market towns attract traffic, and traffic transforms roads into long experiments in discomfort. In wet weather, carts sink. In winter, ruts harden like stone. Pack animals slip. Travelers curse quietly, and everyone develops strong opinions about bridges. Near the gate stands a small roadside shrine. A candle burns before an image of a saint protected from the wind by a shallow stone recess. One merchant touches 2 fingers to his forehead before passing it. Another drops a tiny coin beside the candle. Some swear that making a small offering before entering a crowded market protects a purse from thieves or encourages profitable bargaining. Whether the saint has any interest in supervising wool prices is difficult to determine. At last, the gate begins to move. Wood groans against iron. The great doors open inward. The waiting crowd stirs. But even now, no one rushes wildly through. Animals must be controlled. Carts pass carefully. Officials continue collecting dues. A loose pig at this point could reorganize the entire morning. You step forward beneath the arch. The stones overhead are blackened by years of smoke from torches. Water drips somewhere inside the passage. Your shoulder brushes a merchant's damp cloak, and the smell of wet wool follows you into town. Beyond the gate, narrow streets slope toward the market square. Still the stalls remain quiet. The market bell has not yet given the proper signal. This bell does more than tell time. In a world where few people own clocks, bells divide the day into shared moments. Monastery bells call monks to prayer. Church bells mark services, warnings, celebrations, deaths, and sometimes the beginning or ending of permitted trade. You walk slowly with the crowd. A baker passes carrying empty trays. A servant carries a bundle of rushes for spreading across a floor. A sleepy dog begins following you for no obvious reason. You decide not to object. At the edge of the square, merchants wait beside folded tables and covered baskets. No one is supposed to begin serious selling before the proper opening signal. Rules against early trading can protect buyers and prevent favored customers from quietly purchasing the best goods before everyone else arrives. Naturally, human nature remains medieval human nature. A whispered bargain occurs beside a doorway. 2 coins change hands. A cabbage disappears beneath a cloak. You see nothing. The dog sees everything. Then the bell rings, its deep note rolls across rooftops through mist over chimneys and timbered houses. Another note follows. Merchants move, canvas unfolds, wooden shutters lift, animals shuffle, voices rise. The sleeping square wakes beneath the grey medieval dawn, and you step forward with it, carrying cold hands, muddy boots, and the strange feeling that an entire world of bargains is about to open around you. The first bell fades slowly into the morning mist, but the square itself grows louder with every passing moment. You stand near the edge of the marketplace while merchants transform what had seemed like an empty patch of damp stone into a crowded little city made of boards, baskets, poles, ropes, awnings, stools, crates, and human determination. The sleepy dog is still with you. It has apparently decided that you are now responsible for its breakfast. Around you, traders claim their places with surprising precision. A market square may look chaotic once. Everything is underway, but many stalls belong to particular trades, families, guild members, or long-established sellers. Some spaces are rented, others are connected to rights that have been defended for years, sometimes generations. A wool merchant spreads a rough cloth across his table and begins stacking folded pieces of fabric. Beside him, a potter carefully unpacks bowls cushioned with straw. Across the lane, a woman selling dairy goods arranges wooden tubs beneath a small awning while glancing suspiciously at a neighboring seller who appears to be extending his table several inches farther than usual. This is apparently unacceptable. A quiet argument begins. No one shouts yet. It is still too early for enthusiasm. Market frontage matters because every patch of visible space can attract customers. Officials may regulate where merchants stand, how much room they use, and which trades occupy certain areas. A butcher is not necessarily welcome beside a cloth seller. Fish, livestock, grain, leather bread, pottery, and metal goods may gather in separate lanes or corners. Part of this arrangement is practical. Part of it is tradition. And part of it is probably because nobody wants a basket of fresh linen placed downwind from several barrels of herring. You continue deeper into the square. The ground beneath your boots is uneven, with patches of straw scattered across wet stone. In some places, traders throw rushes or loose straw around their stalls to absorb mud and spills. By evening, these same rushes will be crushed beneath hundreds of feet, mixed with vegetable leaves, feathers, fragments of rope, bits of dung, and whatever the dog decides to contribute. For now, though, everything looks almost orderly. Above the stalls, coloured awnings begin to appear. Most are practical rather than decorative, made from cloth that protects goods from drizzle sun and occasionally birds with poor manners. Ropes are tied to hooks, poles, posts, and nearby buildings. Some stalls are simple boards resting across trestles. Others resemble small wooden booths with shutters that can be folded open. Permanent market buildings exist in larger towns, especially for valuable goods. Covered halls may shelter cloth merchants, grain sellers, or officials responsible for weights and measures. Yet much trade still happens beneath temporary shelters that can vanish almost as quickly as they appear. You watch one merchant struggle with a crooked pole. His assistant holds the rope. The pole tilts. The assistant steps backward. The awning collapses gently over both of them. The dog considers this excellent entertainment. A nearby seller does not even turn around. Evidently, medieval markets have seen worse. Signs begin appearing above several stalls. Since many customers cannot read, merchants do not always depend on written names. Symbols, painted boards, carved objects, hanging tools, or recognizable goods help announce a trade. A large wooden shoe might identify a shoemaker. A bundle of wool may suggest a cloth dealer. A pewter vessel displayed prominently can guide customers toward metalware. Some signs are wonderfully literal. If you sell boots, display a boot. Medieval advertising has discovered minimalism centuries early. A bell from a distant monastery sounds again, thinner than the market bell, and for a moment the square seems to pause beneath it. Monastic hours quietly structure much of daily life. Even people who are not monks learn to recognize the pattern of bells that divide darkness, dawn, work, prayer meals, and evening. A merchant crosses himself quickly. Another continues arranging onions. The onions remain spiritually neutral. Near the center of the square stands a market cross worn by rain and years of touching hands. In some towns, such crosses become important landmarks, places where notices are proclaimed, deals are witnessed, or people simply agree to meet. A woman carrying eggs pauses beneath it and whispers something before touching the stone. Some swear that touching an old market cross before making the first sale of the day brings fair customers and protects a trader from dishonest bargaining. No one can quite agree whether this belief is widespread or merely the invention of sellers who enjoy having something solid to blame when business is poor. You keep walking. A man with iron scales hangs them carefully from a beam. Another merchant opens a chest secured with a heavy iron key. A spice seller lays tiny sacks on a cloth, keeping the most expensive ones close to his hands. Their scents reach you faintly. Pepper cloves, perhaps cinnamon. Perhaps something cheaper, pretending to be cinnamon. Nearby rows of pottery catch the weak morning light. Wooden spoons hang from a cord. Leather belts are draped across a board. Small knives gleam beside whetstones. Bundles of candles lie beside coils of wick. Not all candles are equal. Beeswax candles burn cleaner and smell sweeter than common tallow candles, but they are far more expensive. Churches and wealthy households favor beeswax when they can afford it. Most ordinary people make do with tallow, whose smoky odor adds another layer to interiors already rich with hearth smoke, damp wool, and human beings who have not recently encountered a bathhouse. A candle seller places several pale beeswax candles at the front of his stall. They look almost luxurious. You remember the half-burned candle from the shrine outside the gate and wonder how many people passing there actually contributed enough to pay for it. The dog sneezes beside a basket of herbs. A woman selling ribbons laughs softly. The square continues filling. Now the order beneath the chaos becomes clearer. Bakers gather along one stretch. Cloth sellers cluster beneath larger awnings. Metal workers display tools where the morning light can strike polished surfaces. Produce sellers occupy low tables and baskets. Each trade creates its own little landscape of colors, smells, textures, and sounds. Officials walk through the lanes before business becomes too busy. One carries a staff. Another studies stalls and gestures at a table that extends too far into the passage. The owner reluctantly pulls it back. Market regulations can govern more than prices and measures. They may control stall placement, cleanliness, obstruction of roads, fire risks, and the disposal of waste. A crowded square must remain passable for customers, carts, livestock, and officials. The cracked cart from the gate suddenly appears. Its damaged wheel makes the same miserable creak. You recognize it immediately. The driver guides it cautiously toward an open space near the grain cellars. For a moment the wheel holds, then it settles into a rut with a dull wooden knock. Nothing breaks. Yet the dog looks at you. You look at the wheel. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether animals sense disaster before people do, but this particular dog appears prepared to enjoy whatever happens next. For now the market keeps waking, awnings flutter, coins clink, wooden shutters knock open, voices begin to overlap. Somewhere bread is arriving warm from an oven, and the smell drifts through the damp morning air. Your stomach notices before you do. You follow it toward the baker's, leaving behind the rising forest of stalls as the square finally becomes what everyone has been waiting for, not merely a gathering place, but a living machine of rules, habits, rivalries, smells, and bargains already turning beneath the steady sound of bells. The smell of warm bread pulls you away from the cloth stalls before you have consciously decided to move. It threads through the market air, slipping between the sharper scents of wet wool, horse sweat, wood smoke, onions, damp straw, and the faint, medicinal cloud still lingering near the herb cellar. The dog follows. Of course it does. You reach the baker's row just as another tray arrives from a nearby oven. The loaves are dark, rough, and heavy, their crusts split where steam has forced its way out. Some are made from wheat flour, but many contain rye, barley, oats, or mixtures shaped by local harvests and household wealth. The whitest bread belongs mostly to people with money. Your loaf, if you are an ordinary labourer, is more likely to be coarse brown dense and perfectly capable of surviving an argument. A baker places several loaves onto a wooden board. You expect him simply to name a price. Instead, an official appears. The man from earlier with the staff walks slowly down the row, and another town servant carries a set of scales. Bread is too important to be treated casually. In many medieval towns, authorities attempt to regulate bread through rules linking price weight and the changing cost of grain. When grain becomes expensive, bakers may be allowed to make smaller loaves rather than simply raising prices without limit. If grain becomes cheaper, the expected weight may increase. The details vary from town to town, but the principle is familiar. A loaf should contain what the buyer has paid for. You watch the official lift one loaf, place it on a balance, and compare it with a standard weight. The baker watches his face. You watch the baker. The dog watches the bread. Everyone has priorities. The loaf passes. The baker exhales quietly and reaches for another. False weights, undersized loaves, and poor quality ingredients can bring fines, confiscation, or public embarrassment. Medieval authorities may be surprisingly serious about food regulation because bad bread is not merely an inconvenience. Bread sits at the center of daily eating for a great many people. You buy a small piece, it is still warm, ill. The crust scratches your fingers as you tear it apart, and the inside is dense enough that you understand immediately why people dip bread into broth, ale sauces, or pottage. You break off a corner for the dog. This is the first mistake you have made today. It now considers you a permanent institution. Across the lane, an alewife is arranging wooden cups beside two small barrels. Her sleeves are rolled back, and her apron bears several stains that suggest she has been awake much longer than you have. Ale is everywhere in medieval daily life. It is food, drink, hospitality, trade, and household labor all at once. Many women brew ale at home or sell it locally, and in some places officials inspect the quality and price. A customer tastes from a cup. He considers it. The alewife considers him. He nods. Peace is maintained. Some towns employ ale tasters or other officials expected to judge whether drink is properly made and sold at an acceptable measure. Stories later grow around such inspections, and no one can quite agree whether every method described in popular tradition was genuinely common. One famous tale claims that an ale tester might pour beer onto a wooden bench, sit in it while wearing leather breeches, and decide the ale was too sticky if the leather adhered when he stood. It is a delightful image. It is also one you should treat carefully. Even now, it is hard to tell whether such stories preserve real practice, local humor, or generations of people realizing that bureaucracy becomes much more interesting when someone gets stuck to furniture. The ale you are handed is weak compared with many modern drinks. It is cloudy, slightly sour, and surprisingly comforting in the cold. Beside the ale stall, a cook stirs a cauldron of pottage. Steam rises into the grey air. Inside are peas, onions, herbs, perhaps cabbage, perhaps oats, and perhaps a small amount of meat if fortune has smiled upon the pot. Pottage changes with season and household means. It can be thin or thick, plain or rich, and it appears so frequently on tables that you could almost measure medieval life by how many times someone stirs a pot. You accept a wooden bowl. The dog looks offended that it receives nothing. A little farther down, trenchers are stacked on a board. In wealthier households and taverns, thick slices of stale bread can serve as plates beneath meat or sauces. Once soaked, a trencher may be eaten, given away, or passed to servants or the poor, depending on custom and circumstance. It is a useful reminder that medieval people have fewer reasons to waste bread than you do. Near the edge of the food stalls, an argument breaks out. A woman holds up a loaf and presses one finger into the underside. Something is wrong. The center is underbaked. The baker protests. She protests better. Several customers gather. You remain conveniently nearby. Some sellers are accused of using poor flour, hiding defects, or manipulating weights. Millers suffer similar suspicions. Since they process grain, people often accuse them of keeping more than their proper share or adjusting measures in their own favor. Whether every accusation is fair hardly matters. Millers acquire a reputation. Medieval humor is not always kind to them. A miller carrying a sack through the square passes at exactly the wrong moment. 3 people look at him suspiciously. He keeps walking. You suspect this happens often. The town official takes the disputed loaf, cuts it open, and studies the damp interior. The baker's shoulders sink. A fine may follow. Public punishment is not always severe, but humiliation can be powerful in a tightly packed community. In some places, dishonest food sellers may have faulty goods confiscated or be displayed publicly with the offending merchandise. You imagine standing beside a bad loaf while your neighbors discuss it all afternoon. The experience seems almost worse than prison. Near the ale stall, another measure is being checked. Wooden drinking vessels are not simply random sizes. Local authorities may maintain standard measures, and sellers are expected to match them. Customers complain if they think a cup is short. Weights and measures are serious business because medieval commerce depends heavily on trust reinforced by public standards. Different towns may use different measures, though, which creates exactly the kind of confusion merchants enjoy least. A trader from another region argues that his measure is correct. The local official argues that it is not. Both are probably correct somewhere. The dog sits between them and scratches one ear. You finish the last of your pottage. The warmth settles into your stomach. Around you, breakfast trade becomes heavier. Bakers call out prices, servants carry loaves toward households, apprentices hurry with baskets, ale cups knock against boards, someone drops a spoon. Then you notice a new smell drifting across the square: salt, smoke, fish. The fasting day stalls are opening and the river merchants have begun to shout. You wipe your fingers on the edge of your cloak and follow the scent deeper into the market. The smell reaches you before the stalls themselves do. Salt comes first, sharp and dry in the back of your throat. Then smoke from hanging fish, the sour edge of river water feathers, damp wicker, hot fat from a brazier nearby, and underneath it all the thick animal smell of a market warming beneath hundreds of boots. You follow the dog into a lane where the ground has been covered with straw to absorb water, mud scales, feathers, and everything else respectable merchants prefer not to name before breakfast. A fishwife stands behind a broad board covered with silver bodies. Herrings lie in rows, eels curl in shallow baskets. A few larger river fish rest on damp cloth, their eyes fixed permanently upon the disappointing choices that brought them here. The woman lifts one herring by the tail. You do not need to ask whether it is fresh. She tells you anyway. Freshness matters because fish travels badly without ice. Inland markets depend heavily on salting, smoking, drying, or rapid transport. Barrels of salted herring can travel remarkable distances, and one may have seen more of Europe than you ever will. You lean closer to a basket of eels. The dog does not. For once the dog shows judgment. Medieval people eat fish, not merely because they enjoy it, but because the religious calendar frequently tells them to avoid meat. Fridays, Lent vigils, and other fasting days can restrict the eating of flesh from land animals. The rules vary by place, status, and period. This creates an enormous appetite for fish. It also creates opportunities for creative definitions. Some swear that certain water-loving animals have occasionally been treated as acceptable fasting food because they spend much of their lives in rivers or marshes. No one can quite agree how consistently such reasoning is applied, and you suspect theology becomes flexible when dinner is involved. A monk in a dark wool habit stands nearby, inspecting smoked fish. You recognize the suspicious monk from near the shrine. He squeezes one fish, sniffs another, and looks unconvinced. The seller looks equally unconvinced by him. You move on before doctrine becomes personal. The butchers occupy another section of the market, deliberately separated from cloth and fine goods. Their tables are thick scarred boards. Iron hooks hang from beams. Knives are kept close at hand. Meat is displayed openly, though local rules may govern which animals can be slaughtered, where carcasses are dressed, and how spoiled flesh must be handled. Inspection matters. An unhealthy animal can ruin more than a meal. Town officials may examine meat for signs of disease or decay, and butchers can face penalties for selling what authorities judge unfit. There are also rules in many places about keeping slaughter waste away from well streets or waterways. People do not always obey. You pass a gutter and decide not to investigate. Your sleep will benefit from restraint. At one table, a butcher is arguing with an official over a piece of mutton. The official pokes it. The butcher pokes it back as though the meat might offer testimony. Nothing useful occurs. Nearby, chickens hang by their feet beside baskets containing live birds. Geese honk from wicker cages. A poulterer reaches inside one basket and withdraws a bird with the calm expression of someone whose hands have been pecked for years and no longer recognize insult. Meat consumption depends on wealth, region, season, and circumstance. A prosperous household may eat far more meat than a poor laborer, while ordinary people rely heavily on bread, grain, dishes, vegetables, dairy foods, and small amounts of meat. Offal rarely goes to waste. Liver, kidneys, heart, feet, head's blood fat, and other parts can find uses in kitchens or crafts. Animal fat becomes cooking fuel, candle material, soap ingredient, or lubricant. Horn may become combs and handles. Bone may become pins, gaming pieces, or tools. The medieval market has little patience for throwing away something that can still be sold. You watch a woman bargain for a bundle of trotters. She examines them carefully. The seller names a price. She laughs. The seller lowers it. The dog sits beside her and attempts to participate through eye contact. It receives nothing. Across the lane, smoked fish hangs from a wooden frame in dark, stiff rows. Smoke preserves food by drying it and slowing spoilage. Smoked eel, herring, salmon, and other fish can survive journeys that fresh catches cannot. Salt is even more important. Without modern refrigeration, salt is one of the quiet foundations of food storage. It preserves meat, fish, and sometimes dairy products through winter and travel. Salt itself can be taxed, traded, transported in bulk, and guarded carefully. You touch one salted fish. It feels almost like leather. The seller immediately tells you it is excellent. You immediately believe that excellent is doing heroic work. The market bustles. Servants arrive carrying baskets for wealthy households. Innkeepers purchase meat for evening pots. Housewives compare fish by smell and firmness. Apprentices hurry between stalls with coins wrapped in cloth. One woman presses the belly of a fish with her thumb. Another inspects its gills. A third simply stares at the seller until he lowers the price. You admire the third method. Near a post hangs a small charm made from dried herbs and red thread. The poulterer says it keeps foxes from troubling his birds. Some swear that charms tied near cages or stable doors discourage predators, illness, or bad luck. Whether anyone truly believes the red thread itself has power is difficult to know. Habit and belief blend easily in a world where a prayer, a herb, and a practical knot may all be used together. The dog sniffs the charm. Nothing happens. The foxes remain absent. This is apparently sufficient proof for the morning. Then a bell sounds from somewhere beyond the rooftops. Several merchants glance upward. The day is moving on. You leave the fish lane with smoke in your cloak and salt on your fingertips. Ahead, awnings of deep blue madder, red, dull green, and undyed cream ripple gently above another part of the square. Cloth merchants are opening their best bundles. You step toward them, grateful to exchange the smell of herring for wet wool. The smell of wet wool is gentler than the fish market, although gentler is a generous word for fabric that has spent much of its life near sheep smoke rain and people who consider washing an occasional negotiation. You step beneath a long awning where bolts of cloth hang from wooden rails. The colours seem surprisingly rich after the grey morning. Deep madder red, muted blue, russet brown yellow, touched with green, creamy, undyed wool, and darker cloth, almost black beneath the shade. Your dog follows close behind. It shakes itself. Several drops of muddy water land on a merchant's finest fabric. You continue walking with the calm dignity of someone who has never met this animal before. Cloth is among the most important goods moving through medieval markets. Wool in particular supports entire regions, passing through the hands of shepherds, washers, carders, spinners, weavers, fullers, dyers, merchants, tailors and customers before becoming the cloak warming someone's shoulders. You rub a piece between your fingers. It is thick and slightly rough. A merchant immediately begins explaining its quality. He pulls the fabric toward the light and asks you to notice how tightly it is woven. Better cloth can command high prices, especially when workmanship, imported dyes, or distant origins add prestige. Not every customer can afford such luxury. Many people wear garments until patches require patches of their own. Clothing represents hours of labor, valuable fiber, and careful construction. A worn tunic is not casually thrown away. It can be repaired, altered, cut down for another person, sold second-hand, or eventually reduced to scraps. Across the lane, a woman has precisely that sort of business. Her stall carries used cloaks, hose belts, cap sleeves, and several garments whose previous owners you prefer not to imagine too clearly. Second-hand clothing markets can be lively because a respectable garment remains valuable long after its first wearer stops needing it. Servants may receive old clothing from employers. Widows may sell garments belonging to deceased relatives. Thieves may occasionally discover that someone else's cloak looks particularly attractive. This creates obvious problems. Some towns attempt to regulate used clothing because stolen garments can disappear easily into crowded stalls. The woman lifts a fur-lined cloak. It is heavy, soft around the collar, and far beyond your sensible budget. Fur means warmth, but also status. Squirrel, rabbit, lambskin, and more expensive furs appear in different levels of society, while elite clothing can turn warmth into a public announcement of wealth. Medieval clothing speaks quietly before the wearer says anything. Cut fabric, lining, color decoration, and quantity of cloth all reveal clues about occupation, wealth, age, and rank. You pass a dyer's display. His hands are stained. So are his fingernails. So probably is everything he owns. Dyeing here is messy work. Depending on region and period, dyers use plants' roots, bark, minerals, insects, and imported materials to create different shades. Madder gives reds, weld can produce yellow, woad provides blue. Getting strong, even color requires skill. It can also require substances you would rather not discuss beside dinner. Urine has practical uses in textile processing, particularly in fulling and dye-related work. Medieval industry has a refreshing ability to discover commercial value in almost anything. The dog sniffs a bucket near the dyer. You gently pull it away. There are mysteries you do not need solved. A cloth inspector moves between stalls. He examines a bolt stretched across a table, running his fingers along the weave and checking its width. Guilds and town authorities may regulate textile quality, requiring cloth to meet expected dimensions or standards before sale. Some pieces receive marks or seals indicating inspection. Poorly woven cloth, deceptive stretching, false labeling, and inferior dye can all cause trouble. A merchant complains that his cloth has been unfairly judged. The inspector disagrees. The cloth remains diplomatically silent. No one can quite agree whether every medieval inspection protects customers more than it protects established producers from competition. Regulations often do both. Nearby tailors display finished garments while apprentices carry bundles between workshops and stalls. Cloth is expensive enough that cutting it incorrectly can be disastrous. A skilled tailor, therefore, measures carefully, very carefully. You watch an apprentice hold a piece of chalk while his master folds wool across a board. One poor cut might turn a nobleman's new sleeve into a very expensive cleaning rag. The apprentice looks nervous. You sympathize. Farther along, brighter fabrics hang where wealthier customers gather. Imported silks, fine linen, decorated belts, ribbons, and luxurious trims can travel along long networks of trade before reaching a market like this. They bring distant places into the square. Italian cloth may pass northward, English wool travels outward. Fine textiles from Flanders earn fame. Silk and luxury materials connect local buyers, however indirectly, to Mediterranean merchants and routes stretching much farther east. A woman in a fitted gown examines a length of red cloth. Her maid stands behind her holding a basket. The merchant speaks softly, naming its origin. Whether every claim is true is another matter. Some swear that merchants occasionally improve a fabric story when they cannot improve the fabric. Apparently imported from somewhere impressive has been a sales strategy for a very long time. Color itself can carry meaning. Deep dyes are often expensive because producing them requires labor, knowledge, and raw materials. A rich red or strong blue may therefore signal wealth even before embroidery is added. Yet, medieval sumptuary rules sometimes attempt to control who may wear particular fabrics, furs, jewels, or styles. The exact rules change across places and centuries, but their purpose is familiar. Society wants clothing to display hierarchy clearly. You may have money. That does not always mean authorities want you dressing like someone above your station. Enforcement can be uneven. Fashion, fortunately, has rarely respected legislation with enthusiasm. You pause before a display of belts with small metal fittings. Beside them hang purses designed to be worn from the waist. Since medieval garments have limited convenient pockets, belts carry surprisingly much of daily life: pouches, knives, keys, rosaries, tools, and other useful objects. A merchant's purse, therefore, hangs in plain reach. You remember the crowd at the gate. You also remember warnings about thieves. Your hand moves instinctively toward your own belt. The dog notices and assumes food is involved. It sits. You disappoint it once more. A breeze passes under the awnings, lifting loose corners of fabric. For a moment the market becomes a moving canopy of colour above your head. Blue folds ripple beside red. Cream wool flutters over brown linen, gold thread catches a narrow line of sunlight breaking through the clouds. Beyond the cloth stalls you hear sharper sounds now, coins clicking together, a scale settling, someone arguing over the value of a silver penny from another town. You leave the warmth of hanging wool reluctantly and follow the sound. Behind you, the merchant begins folding his finest cloth again. Ahead, beneath a smaller covered stall, a money changer spreads coins across a wooden table, and every person nearby watches his hands very carefully. The money changer's table is smaller than the cloth stalls, but the crowd around it is tighter. You approach slowly, following the dry, metallic sound of coins striking wood. The dog presses close to your leg, perhaps sensing that none of these shining objects are edible and therefore beneath serious consideration. The money changer sits beneath a narrow awning with a wool cap pulled low over his ears. Before him lie several little piles of silver coins, each separated with care. Some are bright, some are dark, with age. Some have been clipped around the edges until the king's face appears to be enduring a particularly unfortunate haircut. He picks up one coin and turns it between thumb and forefinger. Then he bites it. You wait for an explanation. None comes. Testing precious metal by touch, sound, weight, appearance, and sometimes biting is one way people try to judge whether a coin is trustworthy. Medieval coinage can be bewildering. Different rulers issue different currencies. Old coins remain in circulation beside newer ones. Foreign merchants arrive carrying money from places many buyers have never seen. A penny is not always simply a penny. Its value depends on metal content, local acceptance, official rates, and whether anyone believes it contains as much silver as it claims. You place a coin on the table. The money changer weighs it on a small balance. The beam tilts. He frowns. This is not the expression you hoped for. Clipping coins is a persistent problem. Since many coins are made from precious metal, a dishonest person can shave tiny pieces from the edge and collect the silver while still passing the reduced coin onward. Do this often enough, and one honest-looking penny becomes a smaller penny plus a suspicious collection of silver fragments. Authorities dislike this. Merchants dislike it. You dislike it because the money changer is now looking at you as though you personally arrived last night with a knife and too much free time. You explain nothing. He finally accepts the coin at a slightly reduced value. Medieval finance has welcomed you. Nearby, two merchants are conducting a larger transaction without passing a bag of coins at all. One holds a thin wooden stick marked with notches. A tally stick can record a debt or payment by cutting marks into wood. In some arrangements, the stick is split lengthwise, so each party keeps a matching portion. The grain and notches make alteration difficult without revealing the fraud. It is simple, it is portable, and it does not require anyone to carry a chest of silver through a crowd where half the population appears interested in your belt pouch. You touch the purse at your waist again. The dog sits immediately. Still no food. Credit reaches much deeper into medieval trade than you might expect. A merchant does not always pay cash on the spot. Goods can be purchased on account. Debts can be recorded in books. Traders may promise payment after a fair, after a harvest, or when another customer settles what is already owed. A world short of ready coin becomes inventive. Even ordinary market relationships can depend on reputation. A baker may trust a familiar household until the end of the week. A merchant may extend credit to someone whose family he knows. An innkeeper may refuse credit to a traveller whose expression suggests a sudden interest in distant roads. You find this reasonable. At the next stall, bargaining is underway with far more energy than the sleepy morning deserves. A farmer holds up 2 fingers. The merchant shakes his head. The farmer adds a small coin. The merchant looks wounded. The farmer begins to walk away. The merchant calls him back. The dog follows the farmer for 3 steps before remembering that you are its current investment. Bargaining is not universal for every good in every place. Some prices are regulated, some are customary. Some depend heavily on supply season quality and the relationship between buyer and seller. But haggling is common enough to give markets their characteristic rhythm. You watch a woman buying onions. She examines each bundle as if choosing a diplomatic alliance. The seller names his price. She says nothing. Silence stretches. He lowers it. You make a note of this technique. Apparently, disappointment is free and occasionally profitable. A little farther on, barter still appears where coin is inconvenient. Eggs may be exchanged for small goods. Grain may offset a debt. Labor, cloth, livestock, and produce can all enter transactions where money forms only part of the arrangement. Yet the medieval economy is not simply a barter world. Coins matter greatly. They just coexist with credit payment in kind, written accounts, promises, and a remarkable quantity of personal memory. No one can quite agree whether some rural transactions described as barter are really barter in the strict sense or merely debts calculated in money but settled with goods. From where you stand, the distinction matters less than whether everyone goes home satisfied. A sudden argument erupts beside the money changer. A traveller has produced a foreign coin. The changer turns it over. The traveller insists it is valuable. The changer responds with the expression of a man who has heard this before. The coin carries an unfamiliar design and a worn edge. Its silver content may be good or poor, or merely difficult to judge. Foreign currency creates opportunities for specialists who understand exchange rates and metal values. It also creates opportunities for anyone confident enough to lie. Some swear that dishonest changers keep separate scales for strangers' widows and people who look too tired to argue. Whether this is truth market gossip or the natural suspicion directed toward anyone who profits from mathematics is hard to tell. The suspicious monk appears again. He has somehow reached the front of the crowd. He places 3 coins on the table. The changer studies them. The monk studies the changer. The dog studies the monk's fish parcel. You begin to see a pattern. The transaction ends without incident. The monk walks away. The dog considers following him. You whisper a warning. For reasons known only to the animal, it listens. Beside the table hangs a small leather pouch secured with a drawstring. Merchants often divide money rather than keeping everything together. Larger sums may be hidden under clothing, locked in chests, deposited with trusted associates, or guarded by servants. A market is crowded enough to make theft easy. It is also crowded enough to make pursuit interesting. You hear someone shout behind you. For one heartbeat, every nearby hand moves toward a purse. Nothing happens. A boy has simply dropped a basket of apples. The apples roll across the stones. 3 people help gather them. One disappears under a cart. The dog retrieves it proudly, then eats it. The boy stares. You place a small coin into his hand. This too is medieval finance. As midday draws nearer, transactions grow quicker. Coins pass from palm to palm. Tallies are marked. Debts are promised. Prices rise and fall with impatience. You notice how little of the market depends on perfect certainty. Everyone weighs risk. Is the coin good? Will the debtor pay? Is the cloth truly Flemish? Will grain be cheaper next week? Will this merchant still be here tomorrow? Even now it is hard to tell whether medieval commerce runs more on silver or trust. Perhaps it runs on both, with suspicion holding the whole arrangement together. Then another scent reaches you from beyond the crowd. Sharp herbs, dried flowers, vinegar, something bitter enough to make the dog sneeze from several paces away. You turn toward a narrow row of stalls crowded with jars, bundles, bottles, roots, charms, and objects whose purposes are not immediately comforting. The apothecaries are waiting. The apothecary row feels quieter than the rest of the market, though not because fewer people gather there. Here voices naturally drop. Customers lean closer to tables. Sellers speak in measured tones. Bundles of herbs hang upside down beneath awnings, their dried leaves rustling whenever the wind moves through the square. Small pottery jars stand beside stoppered bottles, wooden boxes, folded papers, strings of roots, and tiny cloth packets whose contents appear capable of curing almost anything, provided you believe the person selling them. The dog sneezes again. A woman behind the nearest stall looks offended. You decide not to mention that her merchandise caused it. The air smells of rosemary, sage, rue, vinegar, dried mint, garlic, resin, and something bitter that seems determined to remain inside your nose for the rest of the day. Medieval medicine is a crowded meeting place between learned theory, household experience, religious belief, practical observation, and old custom. A remedy might contain herbs gathered by a village healer, another might be copied from a medical manuscript. A third might require prayer. A fourth might involve all three because there is no reason to be careless when illness is involved. You watch an apothecary weigh dried leaves on a small balance. He uses tiny metal weights far finer than those used for bread. His customer is an elderly man rubbing one knee. The apothecary recommends a mixture involving herbs and warm oil. Whether it helps depends on the herb, the condition, the preparation, and perhaps how desperately the man wants to believe tomorrow's knee will hurt less. Some medieval remedies are sensible. Honey can soothe wounds and has properties people understand through experience, even if they cannot explain microbes. Willow preparations contain compounds related to later pain medicines. Certain herbs genuinely affect digestion, sleep, or inflammation. Other remedies are less reassuring. You notice a jar containing powdered material whose label means nothing to you. Perhaps this is fortunate. No one can quite agree whether every strange ingredient described in surviving medical texts was actually used regularly or simply copied from older authorities because scribes have always been reluctant to delete impressive information. A young apprentice appears behind the stall with ink stains on his fingers. He carries a folded sheet covered with notes. The apothecary checks it carefully. Literacy can be valuable in this trade. Recipes may circulate in Latin or local languages, mixing instructions inherited from classical medicine with practical household knowledge. Measurements must be remembered. Ingredients must not be confused. A mistake between two similar-looking roots can transform a soothing evening into a memorable theological discussion. Across the lane, a barber surgeon has established a modest space beneath a striped cloth. His tools are wrapped in linen. A basin sits nearby. You do not investigate too closely. Barber surgeons may perform tasks ranging from shaving and tooth pulling to bloodletting and minor surgical work. Their place in medieval medicine differs from that of university-trained physicians whose services remain far beyond the reach of most ordinary market customers. Beside the barber stands a container of leeches. The dog stops walking. You stop walking. The leeches continue being leeches. Bloodletting grows from medical theories about balancing bodily humours. Learned medicine commonly describes health in terms of blood phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, with illness sometimes blamed on imbalance. The season-age diet and even astrological timing can influence treatment. You glance toward the cloudy sky. It seems unqualified to make medical decisions. Yet, astrology and medicine often overlap. Physicians may consult celestial signs when deciding when to bleed a patient or perform certain treatments. Some swear that particular parts of the body correspond to signs of the zodiac. Whether the average person in a muddy market understands the full theory is doubtful. They probably understand the fee. At another stall, a woman sells charms beside her herbs. Small cloth bags contain dried plants. A piece of parchment bears a prayer. A little cross hangs from red thread. There is no clear boundary here between remedy and protection. A mother may give a child an herb for fever while also tying a charm near the bed. A traveller may carry a saint's medal and garlic. A household may call for both a healer and a priest. Medieval people are perfectly capable of using several explanations at once. You pick up a small packet containing lavender. The seller tells you it encourages calm sleep. This seems reasonable enough. Then she offers another packet that supposedly protects against troublesome dreams if placed beneath the pillow on a Thursday. You ask silently, what happens on Wednesday? She does not volunteer the information. The dog sniffs the lavender. Its eyelids droop. Perhaps the marketing is excellent. A little farther down, a relic seller has gathered a crowd. Inside a tiny wooden case lies what he claims is a fragment of cloth associated with a holy person. The suspicious monk is there again. Naturally, he examines the object with narrowed eyes. Relics occupy a powerful place in medieval devotion. Churches treasure bones, cloth objects, or fragments connected with saints, and pilgrims travel great distances to visit famous shrines. Authentic relics can bring prestige and visitors. Questionable ones can bring nearly the same thing until somebody asks difficult questions. Those who tell the tale never fully agree how many roadside relic sellers genuinely believe their own claims. The monk clearly believes this seller should explain himself. The seller begins a long story involving a monastery, a storm, a dying pilgrim, and a bishop whose name becomes less convincing every time he mentions it. You move away before the ending. Nearby, a tooth drawer displays several extracted teeth in a small bowl, perhaps as proof of experience. You immediately decide your teeth feel excellent. A customer does not share your good fortune. He sits on a stool with both hands gripping the edges while the practitioner prepares a metal instrument. You guide the dog toward the herb stalls again. Bedtime stories benefit from selective observation. At a narrow table covered with spice packets, remedies become expensive. Pepper, cloves, cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, and other imported goods can serve cooking and medicine alike. Medieval medical recipes frequently blur the distinction between pantry and pharmacy. Warm spices may be recommended for digestion. Herbs flavor pottage and soothe stomachs. Vinegar seasons food and cleanse. Wine can become a drink medicine or solvent for other ingredients. You realize that a medieval kitchen cupboard and a medicine chest are distant cousins. A woman buys sage and mutters that it is for her husband's memory. The seller nods gravely. The woman adds that forgetting to bring home firewood is apparently a disease requiring treatment. You almost laugh. The dog does, or perhaps it coughs. At the end of the row hangs a small iron charm shaped roughly like a hand. The seller claims iron discourages harmful spirits and bad luck. Iron carries protective associations in many folk traditions, especially around doors, beds, livestock, and vulnerable places. An old horseshoe nailed above an entrance may be practical scrap decoration, protection, or all three. No one stops to separate categories neatly. The market does not encourage neat categories. You purchase the lavender packet. It disappears into your belt pouch beside your remaining coins. The dog seems pleased. Then a loud chorus of honking erupts beyond the apothecaries. Sheep bleat. A horse stamps hard against the stones. Someone shouts that a pig has slipped its tether. You turn toward the noise. The livestock market has come fully awake. And judging from the movement of the crowd, something with four legs has just developed a strong opinion about where it would rather be. The pig appears first as a blur of pink hide between two baskets. Then comes the shouting. A man lunges after it, catches only a length of rope, and nearly loses one boot in the mud. The pig charges beneath a table, sends 3 wooden bowls rolling across the stones, and emerges beside a flock of geese that react as though the end of the world has arrived exactly on schedule. You step aside. The dog steps forward. This is not helpful. The pig stops for one miraculous heartbeat and stares at the dog. The dog stares back. Somewhere behind you, the suspicious monk says something under his breath that sounds very much like a prayer. Then the pig turns sharply, trots toward its exhausted owner, and is seized by both ears. Peace returns, more or less. The livestock market occupies a broad, rougher part of the square, where stone gives way to churned earth. Posts stand along the edges for tethering cattle and horses. Wooden hurdles form temporary pens for sheep and goats. Chickens sit in wicker cages. Geese complain from beneath nets. Everywhere you look, something is chewing, stamping, bleating, snorting, or attempting to eat the rope intended to keep it in place. Buying an animal is different from buying a loaf. A loaf rarely kicks. A horse may represent years of savings, a farmer's livelihood, a knight's mobility, or a merchant's ability to move goods from one town to another. Cattle provide milk traction, meat, hides, and status. Sheep bring wool. Pigs turn scraps and woodland forage into valuable food. So buyers inspect carefully. You stop beside a brown mare whose seller is praising her with the enthusiasm of a man who has never noticed a single flaw in any creature he has owned. The buyer begins with the mouth. Horse traders commonly examine teeth because teeth can help estimate age. A young animal's mouth changes as permanent teeth appear, while older teeth wear down in recognizable ways. The seller says the mare is 6. The buyer says 8. The mare says nothing. You suspect she has heard this debate before. Eyes are checked for cloudiness. Legs are felt for swelling. Hooves are lifted and examined for cracks. The animal is walked forward, then turned, then walked again, so the buyer can watch its gait. A horse that limps during inspection is unlikely to become more attractive simply because the seller insists it only dislikes Mondays. Some traders have reputations for disguising defects. A horse may be exercised before sale to make it appear lively. Another might be kept quiet so a troublesome temperament is less obvious. Hooves can be cleaned and oiled. Coats can be groomed until a tired animal looks far healthier beneath market light. Some swear that dishonest sellers once filled hollows above an old horse's eyes with wax or other material to make it appear younger. Whether such tricks are common or merely repeated because everyone enjoys a story about a cheating horse dealer is hard to tell. You keep your hands in your purse. The mare is beautiful. This is exactly how expensive mistakes begin. Nearby, a farmer presses his fingers along a cow's ribs while another person studies its udder. A dairy cow is valuable for what she can produce over time, so buyers look for signs of health, age, and usefulness. Cattle horns may also become part of arguments about age, though methods based on horn rings are not always reliable. Medieval livestock purchasing involves a great deal of looking wise while quietly hoping the animal does not become ill next week. At the sheep pens, things are calmer, mostly. Wool matters almost as much as the animal itself. Buyers part the fleece with their fingers, checking thickness, cleanliness, and quality. Different breeds and regions produce different kinds of wool, and experienced merchants know what they want. One sheep pushes its head through the hurdle and begins chewing the edge of a man's cloak. He does not notice. You consider warning him. Then you remember the cabbage hidden beneath a cloak earlier. Perhaps the market is simply correcting its accounts. Beyond the sheep, several pigs lie in straw under a crude shelter. Their seller claims they are excellent animals because they eat almost anything. This is not exaggerated. Pigs can be fed household scraps, grain waste, and other leftovers. In some regions, they are driven into woodland to forage on acorns and beech mast during the proper season. The right to feed pigs in woodland can be regulated carefully because trees and grazing rights belong to somebody. A pig wandering into the wrong lord's forest may discover that even dinner has paperwork. The dog pulls toward a basket of hens. You shorten the rope that you have somehow acquired for it. You cannot remember agreeing to ownership. The market has simply decided. Animal health is a serious concern, though medieval veterinary knowledge blends practical experience with remedies that can seem strange to you. Farriers know horses well because they work constantly with hooves, shoes, and legs. Stable workers recognize changes in appetite or behavior. Shepherds understand wounds, parasites, births, and seasonal weaknesses. Herbal treatments are common. So are charms. At one horse stall, a sprig of rowan has been tied beside the tethering post. The owner says it keeps misfortune away. Another horse wears a small charm near its harness. Some swear that red thread iron objects special herbs, prayers, or blessed tokens protect animals from sickness, envy, or harmful forces. You suspect the horse cares mostly about oats. Still, if you owned an animal worth half your savings, you might try the oats and the charm. A farrier works nearby beneath a small awning. He lifts a horse's hoof between his knees, trims it carefully, and prepares an iron shoe. The work requires strength and patience because the horse has opinions about balancing on three legs. Iron shoes protect hooves on hard roads, especially for animals carrying loads over long distances. Not every medieval horse is shod in exactly the same way, and local conditions matter. The roads outside the gate come back to your mind, frozen ruts, mud, broken stones, that cracked cart wheel. You almost feel sympathy for every hoof in the square. A buyer examines another horse's coat and suddenly runs his hand against the direction of the hair. The seller looks annoyed. The buyer is searching for hidden scars. A scar may reveal an old injury harness rubbing or other trouble. Similarly, cattle buyers inspect skin and movement. Sheep buyers check mouths and feet. Pig buyers consider size, condition, and appetite. Everyone is trying to read an animal's body like a manuscript. Unfortunately, animals do not provide footnotes. At the far end, two men clasp hands over the purchase of an ox. They bargain, loudly release hands, bargain again, then slap palms together once more. A handshake can help mark agreement, especially before witnesses. Terms may include payment, later delivery elsewhere, or guarantees about the animal. Arguments can still arise afterward if a horse turns out lame or a cow proves unhealthy. Local courts may hear disputes over livestock, just as they hear disputes over land debt and damaged goods. The ox stands between the men with the calm expression of someone who knows that whichever man wins the work remains the same. A monastery bell sounds beyond the rooftops. The animals barely notice. The crowd is thicker now, and the market has reached that part of the day when noise becomes a single, continuous murmur. You move between pens slowly. A goose snaps at your cloak. A calf licks your sleeve. The dog discovers something under a straw pile and is immediately told to leave it alone. Then you notice a series of wooden signs beyond the livestock area, each marked with symbols of particular trades: hammers, shears, shoes, barrels. The craftsmen's lanes begin there. Men in aprons stand beside inspected goods, while apprentices hurry between workshops and stalls. Above one booth hangs a guild mark carved into dark wood. You leave the animals behind, though the dog glances regretfully toward the pig pens. Ahead, commerce becomes more controlled, more territorial, and perhaps even more argumentative. The craftsman's lane announces itself through sound before you reach the first stall. A hammer strikes iron somewhere behind a timber wall. A saw rasps through wood. Shears click. A cooper knocks metal hoops into place around a barrel, each blow deep enough to be felt through your muddy boots. The dog pauses beside you, apparently impressed that humans have found so many ways to make noise without barking. This part of the market feels different from the livestock pens. Goods are arranged with greater formality. Wooden signs hang above booths. Some bear carved tools. Others display marks associated with particular workshops or guilds. Apprentices carry finished wares from nearby streets, while masters stand behind tables with the confidence of people who have spent years learning how to make one thing properly. In many medieval towns, craft guilds attempt to control who may practice a trade, how goods should be made, what quality customers may expect, and sometimes even where members can sell. You stop beside a shoemaker's stall, rows of leather shoes lie on a board, most with stitched uppers, and soles darkened with wax and handling. A customer bends one shoe between his hands while the shoemaker watches as if the man were testing a cathedral. Leather is expensive enough that poor workmanship matters. The guild may require certain methods, materials, or standards. Bad stitching, weak leather, or falsely advertised goods can damage not only one craftsman's reputation, but that of the entire trade. Beside the shoemaker, a nervous young apprentice watches an official approach with suspicion and silence. Apprenticeship can last for years. A family may place a child with a master who provides training, discipline, and often lodging. The apprentice performs errands, prepares materials, sweeps floors, carries goods, and slowly acquires the craft. It is education. It is employment. The inspector returns the shoe. Approved. The apprentice breathes again. You move farther along to a metal worker's table where knives, buckles, hooks, hinges, nails, and tools lie in ordered rows. Iron keys hang from a cord, some long and beautifully shaped, others plain and heavy. Keys matter because medieval life contains many locked chests and oak doors. Cloth documents, silver spices, tools, and money are worth protecting. A large iron key hanging from a belt can quietly announce responsibility. The dog sniffs one. It receives no authority. Across the lane, a pewterer has polished cups until they catch the pale daylight. Nearby, a cooper displays barrels and buckets. A carpenter shows stools and carved boxes. A smith sells horseshoes beside hinges. Each trade has its territory. Guild members can become fiercely protective of it. A shoemaker may object if someone without proper training begins selling shoes. A baker may complain about unlicensed bread. A cloth worker may insist that another trade has crossed into work reserved for his own. Even tiny distinctions matter. In some towns, crafts that seem nearly identical can belong to separate organizations because one uses another material process or privilege. No one can quite agree whether these divisions always improve quality or simply give craftsmen more reasons to argue at meetings. You suspect meetings are involved. They always are. A bell rings from a nearby guild hall. Several men glance toward it but do not move. Guild life extends beyond trade. Members may attend religious services together, support altars, contribute to funerals, aid sick members, help widows, and participate in feast day processions. A guild is therefore not merely a business association. It is part workplace regulation, part social network, part religious fraternity, and part collection of people who know exactly who borrowed whose ladder last winter. At a narrow stall you notice a beeswax candle burning before a small painted saint. The craftsman touches the edge of the table before beginning a sale. Some guilds place themselves under the protection of patron saints associated with their work. Some swear that neglecting such a saint invites spoiled workmanship, broken tools, or troublesome customers. Whether the warning begins as devotion or workshop discipline is hard to tell. Either way, the candle stays lit. The scent of beeswax mingles with hot iron and damp wood. A journeyman passes carrying tools wrapped in cloth. He has completed apprenticeship, but does not necessarily own a workshop. Becoming a master may require money, guild approval, proof of skill, local status, and sometimes a finished piece demonstrating competence. The idea sounds romantic. In practice, it may also involve fees. Medieval advancement rarely misses an opportunity for a fee. You hear an argument near the cooper's stall. A stranger has offered barrels at a lower price. Two local craftsmen object. The stranger claims his barrels are sound. The locals claim he has no right to sell them here. An official arrives with impressive speed. The dog sits down. Apparently, this has become entertainment. Guild monopolies can make markets orderly, but they can also exclude outsiders. Visiting craftsmen may face restrictions. Rural producers may be forbidden from selling certain manufactured goods inside town walls. Some sellers must pay additional charges. The stranger gestures toward his barrels. One local cooper taps a hoop and shakes his head dramatically. The barrel does not collapse. This is disappointing to everyone except the stranger. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. How often guild disputes become truly bitter. But craftsmen care deeply about privileges that protect their livelihoods. You cannot blame them entirely. Years of training are invested in skill. Tools cost money. Raw materials cost money. Rent costs money. Even feast day candles cost money. And if an outsider arrives selling cheaper goods, principles become surprisingly flexible. You leave the dispute unresolved. Behind you, the hammering resumes. Ahead, the market changes again. The stalls become less formally marked, but no less busy. Women stand behind baskets of eggs, cheese, fish, ale, cloth, herbs, and second-hand goods. A widow counts coins into her palm. An alewife argues cheerfully with a customer. A dairy seller wraps butter in leaves. The guild lane has shown you who is officially allowed to make and sell. The next rows show how much commerce depends on people whose work does not always fit neatly inside those rules. You follow the dog towards them, with the guild bell fading behind you, and the smell of fresh cheese drifting through the square. The smell of fresh cheese leads you into a narrower stretch of the market, where the stalls are less imposing than those of the guild masters, but the trade is no less serious. Here baskets sit on low stools, wooden tubs rest on folded cloth, eggs are cushioned in straw, butter is wrapped in leaves. Small cheeses lie beneath linen covers to keep off dust flies, and the dog whose interest in dairy products has become immediate and deeply spiritual. A woman behind the first stall points one finger at him. He sits. You are beginning to suspect she has more authority than the gatekeeper. Women are everywhere in the medieval marketplace. They sell food, brew ale, prepare cooked dishes, trade cloth, carry produce. mend garments, manage household goods, and help run family businesses. Their legal freedom varies enormously depending on place status, marital condition, custom, and period, but the market would struggle badly without them. You watch an alewife pour drink into a wooden cup. Her husband is nowhere in sight. Perhaps he works elsewhere. Perhaps he is dead. Perhaps, judging from the speed with which she counts coins, she has simply discovered that the business functions more efficiently without his advice. Ale brewing is closely connected to household labor, and women often produce drink for family use before selling surplus locally. A successful alewife can become a familiar figure in town. She also attracts regulation. Quality, price, and measure may be inspected just as you saw earlier. If her ale is weak, sour, or sold short, neighbors know quickly. Reputation moves through a medieval town faster than any cart, especially embarrassing reputation. The woman beside her sells butter and cheese brought in from the surrounding countryside. Her hands are red with cold. She tells a customer that the cheese was made 3 days ago. The customer sniffs it, then sniffs it again. Apparently, trust requires evidence. Dairy work often falls heavily upon women in rural households. Milking, churning, making cheese, tending poultry, managing eggs, preserving foods, and carrying surplus to market can produce small but important amounts of cash. A handful of coins may pay for salt needles, candles, pottery, or other things the household cannot easily produce. Tiny transactions keep daily life moving. You notice a widow seated behind a table of second-hand clothing. The fur-lined cloak from earlier is gone. Someone somewhere is now considerably warmer and considerably poorer. Widowhood can change a woman's economic position in complicated ways. In many places, a widow may have greater legal independence than a married woman because she is no longer acting within her husband's household authority. She may inherit property, continue a business, collect debts, enter contracts, or appear before local courts. Exact rights differ widely. Custom matters, status matters, local law matters, and as always money matters. The widow opens an iron-bound chest and removes a folded account sheet. Her fingers are ink-stained. She can read enough to keep records. That alone makes several nearby customers treat her with care. Not all market women are literate, of course, and neither are all market men. Accounts can be kept through marks, tallies, memory, or the help of clerks. But a woman who manages a profitable stall may know precisely who owes her 3 pennies from last Tuesday. You would rather owe the king. Near the centre of the row, a young servant hurries past with a basket over one arm. She carries bread, onions, candles, and a small packet of pepper. Her task sounds simple until you remember that she must return with the correct goods at the correct prices and with the remaining coins intact. Household servants often act as market buyers, especially for prosperous urban families. They become familiar with sellers' expected prices, measures, and quality. An experienced servant knows which baker gives full weight. She knows which fishwife keeps the fresher catch hidden beneath the top layer. She knows which merchant suddenly becomes very generous when an employer's steward is standing nearby. Markets reward memory. The servant pauses beside an herb seller and whispers something. You catch only the words mistress and headache. The seller wraps dried leaves in cloth. Perhaps it is sage, perhaps feverfew, perhaps something that will taste terrible enough to convince everyone it must be medicinal. Some swear that women guarding household remedies know more practical medicine than wandering healers do, especially when it comes to childbirth, fevers, burns, digestion, and everyday illness. No one can quite agree where household knowledge ends and professional healing begins. The boundary is as blurred as the market mud. You move toward a stall piled with fish. The fishwife recognizes the dog. That is not encouraging. She points toward the ground beside you, and he sits again. Apparently, he now obeys every working woman in town except you. Fishwives can be forceful traders because fish must move quickly. Fresh goods lose value with every passing hour. Bargaining, therefore, becomes more intense as the day progresses. The fishwife calls to a passing customer. He refuses her price. She calls after him. He keeps walking. She lowers it slightly. He turns. You have seen this dance before. Commerce has choreography. Nearby, two women argue over the ownership of a basket. The matter appears trivial. It is not. One says she lent it yesterday. The other says it was given. Several neighbors immediately develop strong memories of the event. This is how local disputes grow. Manor courts, borough courts, and other local institutions may hear quarrels involving debts, contracts, inheritance, market behavior, broken promises, and property. Women can appear in these records as plaintiffs, defendants, witnesses, traders, widows, servants, brewers, and neighbors. A market transaction can follow you all the way to court. So can gossip, especially gossip. Reputation matters because credit depends on trust. If people believe a seller cheats, measures, hides spoiled goods, fails to repay debts, or behaves dishonestly, trade becomes harder. For women, reputation can carry additional burdens connected to sexuality, marriage obedience, household conduct, and public behavior. A woman may be judged not merely on whether her cheese is good, but whether everyone approves of the manner in which she sells it. You find this exhausting on her behalf. At the next stall, a married couple sells cloth together. The husband handles a customer. The wife watches the scales. When he gives the wrong change, she corrects him without looking up. He corrects the coins. No discussion follows. You understand the structure of the household immediately. Marriage can limit a woman's independent legal identity under certain systems, yet real economic practice is often messier than legal theory. Wives work beside husbands, manage shops during absences, collect money, supervise apprentices, and sometimes continue businesses after widowhood. The parchment may describe one arrangement, the market shows another. Even now it is hard to tell how much freedom a particular woman possesses merely by looking at her stall. Custom lives in practice as much as in law. You pass a baker's wife carrying a tray, an alewife rolling a barrel, a widow counting silver, a dairy seller wrapping cheese, a servant checking change, a cloth trader measuring linen, a woman selling pilgrim badges from a small board near the market cross. The entire square seems threaded together by their work. Then music drifts faintly from beyond the stalls, a pipe, a small drum, someone cheering. The dog's ears rise. Beyond the women's trading rows, a cluster of travellers, pilgrims, musicians and curious spectators has formed near the edge of the square. A man is holding up something he claims came from a famous shrine. The suspicious monk is already walking toward him. You follow. The music grows clearer as you leave the trading rows behind. A pipe trills above the market murmur. A small drum answers with a slow, uneven rhythm. Children weave between adults. Merchants lean away from their stalls to watch, and even the dog seems to understand that something more interesting than cheese is happening. Near the market cross, a travelling performer balances on a low wooden bench while juggling 3 wooden balls. He is not especially graceful. This improves the entertainment. One ball nearly strikes a pilgrim. The pilgrim ducks. The crowd laughs softly. The performer bows as if the mistake had been deliberate. Markets are not only places for buying flower cloth animals and tools, they are also gathering points where news stories, songs, rumours, religious devotion and spectacle mingle together. A busy market creates an audience. Where there is an audience, someone eventually appears hoping to earn a coin. You approach a musician seated on a stool beneath a patched awning. He plays a small stringed instrument while another man sings a tale about a knight who loses his horse, his purse, and apparently most of his judgment. The song is long. The knight is unfortunate. The audience seems delighted. Storytellers and musicians can carry tales between towns, changing them slightly at every stop. News travels in similar ways. A merchant hears something at one fair, repeats it at an inn, and watches it become far more dramatic by the time it reaches another market. No one can quite agree whether a particular story began as truth or entertainment. This rarely prevents anyone from repeating it. A pilgrim pushes past you, and you notice the small metal badge pinned to his cloak. It shows the image of a saint. Pilgrim badges are among the most distinctive souvenirs of medieval travel. Visitors to important shrines purchase inexpensive badges made from lead alloys or other metals and attach them to hats, cloaks, or bags. They show where a person has been. They can also carry spiritual meaning. A badge associated with a holy shrine might be kept as a reminder of devotion touched to a sacred site or believed to provide a measure of protection. You remember the roadside shrine outside the gate. The half-burned candle is probably still there. Perhaps another traveller has added a coin by now. At a nearby stall, badges hang in rows, shell shapes, saintly figures, small crosses, symbols associated with famous pilgrimage destinations. The seller insists one badge has touched a particularly holy relic. The suspicious monk arrives at precisely this moment. You almost feel sorry for the seller. Almost. The monk lifts the badge. He studies it. The seller begins explaining. His story contains several bishops. This is rarely a good sign. Relic sellers occupy uncertain territory. Genuine relics are treasured in churches and monasteries, attracting pilgrims who may travel hundreds of miles to pray near the remains or possessions of saints. But the demand for sacred objects also encourages dubious claims. Fragments of bone, cloth, wood, oil, dust, and other materials can be presented as holy. Some are carefully documented. Others rely heavily on enthusiasm. Some swear that enough fragments of certain famous relics circulate through medieval Europe to construct objects far larger than the originals could ever have been. Whether people of the time are as gullible as later storytellers imagine is another question. Medieval buyers can be skeptical. Monks can be skeptical. You are currently watching one prove it. The seller lowers his price. The monk raises one eyebrow. The price falls again. Spiritual inquiry has become bargaining. You leave them to it. A crowd has formed around a fortune teller seated behind a little cloth-covered table. She has a deck of painted cards beside several small stones. Divination practices vary widely, and some are condemned by church authorities while continuing in popular custom. People consult dreams, stars, lots, charms, signs, and wandering specialists for hints about marriage, travel, illness harvests, and missing objects. A young man places a coin before her. She studies his palm. He looks terrified. You hope she is about to tell him something gentle. Instead, she points toward a woman standing behind him. The crowd laughs. The young man turns red. The woman folds her arms. Whatever destiny has revealed, it appears to involve an apology. You move on. Nearby, a man displays a small animal inside a wooden cage. The creature is unfamiliar to several people in the crowd, and this alone is enough to produce wonder. Traveling merchants and entertainers sometimes display exotic animals, curious objects, unusual shells, strange stones, or foreign goods as marvels. Descriptions grow with distance. A large fish becomes a sea monster. A carved horn becomes proof of a unicorn. A strange bone becomes a dragon relic. Even now, it is hard to tell whether every seller believes the stories attached to such objects. The customer often buys the story as much as the thing itself. One merchant holds up a long, pale object. He claims it comes from a unicorn. You look at it. The suspicious monk looks at it. The dog looks at it. The dog is the only one who seems completely convinced. In reality, narwhal tusks and other unusual natural objects can circulate through Europe, wrapped in fantastic explanations. A rare object becomes more valuable when no one nearby knows exactly what it is. Mystery improves the price. You have already learned this rule. At another corner, a performer produces cups and small balls on a wooden table. He places a ball beneath one cup, moves the cups, moves them again, then invites someone to guess. A merchant chooses incorrectly. The performer smiles. The crowd laughs. Games of skill, chance, and deception flourish wherever crowds and loose coins gather. Authorities sometimes disapprove of gambling, especially when it causes disorder, debt, or quarrels. This has never stopped gambling. Two men crouch nearby, rolling dice onto a board. Coins rest between them. One whispers a prayer before throwing. The dice do not appear impressed. Religious belief and games of chance make surprisingly comfortable neighbors in the medieval market. You see saints' badges beside dice, prayer beads beside juggling balls, a relic seller beside a man pretending to swallow a knife. The world does not divide itself neatly into sacred and ordinary spaces. Everything mixes. The dog suddenly pulls you toward a food seller roasting nuts over a brazier. You resist. He pulls harder. You compromise by buying a handful. The nuts are warm. You eat slowly while watching a storyteller begin another tale. This one concerns a merchant who meets a ghost on a forest road. Some swear that travelers avoid certain crossroads after dark because wandering spirits gather there. Others say bells iron prayers or carrying a saint's token offer protection. You touch the lavender packet in your purse. It is not intended for ghosts. Still, it is what you have. The afternoon light has begun to change. Shadows stretch longer beneath awnings. The performers grow louder as shoppers finish their serious business and become more willing to stop. Then, a sudden cry cuts through the music. A woman grabs her belt pouch. A man pushes through the crowd. Someone shouts, "Thief!" The musicians stop. The dice disappear. A market constable turns toward the noise, and the dog, who has spent the entire day preparing for this exact moment without telling you, bolts after the fleeing figure. The dog disappears beneath an awning before you can even tighten your grip on the rope. For one dreadful second, all you see is a blue-grey blur of cloaks, baskets' elbows, and startled merchants. Then a stack of wooden bowls tips sideways. Somebody curses without quite reaching profanity, and the dog reappears farther across the square, with one end of a torn leather strap clenched triumphantly between its teeth. The thief is gone. The purse is not. A market constable pushes through the crowd carrying a short staff. Another official follows, asking questions in a voice weary enough to suggest that this is not the first missing purse of the day. Crowded markets are ideal places for theft. People carry money openly in belt pouches. Merchants handle coins constantly. Buyers become distracted by bargaining. Servants carry baskets in both hands. Pilgrims stare at relics. Farmers argue over livestock. Performers gather audiences so tightly that one person can brush against another without immediately attracting notice. You touch your own purse again. The dog looks at your hand. This time, at least, he does not expect bread. The woman whose purse was cut checks the contents while several witnesses speak at once. One saw a man in a brown hood. Another insists the hood was green. A third remembers no hood at all, but is certain the thief had a crooked nose. The constable closes his eyes briefly. Medieval criminal investigation depends heavily on witnesses' reputation, sworn testimony, and the ability of a community to identify suspicious people. There is no quiet room filled with clever instruments. There is a muddy square filled with 8 people who disagree about a hat. The thief may still be nearby. Town gates can be watched, streets can be searched, neighbors can be questioned. And if someone raises the traditional hue and cry, others may be expected to join in pursuing an offender. The principle is simple. When a crime is witnessed, the alarm spreads through the community. You imagine the sound carrying down narrow streets, drawing shopkeepers from doorways and servants from kitchens. Effective in theory, less effective if everyone chooses a different direction. The constable holds up the recovered strap. The dog sits proudly. Several people praise him. You realize with mild resentment that he now has a better reputation in town than you do. The woman gives him a scrap of sausage. Your authority is finished. At the edge of the square stands a raised wooden platform beside a pillory. You noticed it earlier without looking closely. Now, with theft on everyone's mind, its purpose becomes much clearer. Public punishment is designed to be seen. Fines are common for many market offences, especially lesser ones. But shame can be added when authorities want misconduct remembered. The pillory restrains a person's head and hands in a wooden frame. Stocks usually restrain the feet. Punishments vary enormously by place and offence, and not every dishonest trader ends a morning trapped in timber. But the possibility matters. A small community is an uncomfortable place to become famous for selling bad bread. You have already learned this. Across the square, someone points toward an older man standing beside a grain stall. Apparently, he has been convicted of using false measures. An official carries a container beside him. The measure is too small. The crowd murmurs. Dishonest weights and measures are treated seriously because nearly every transaction depends upon them. If a merchant cheats by shaving a little grain from every sale, the loss accumulates across dozens of customers. Authorities may confiscate false measures, impose fines, suspend trading rights, or use public humiliation. The grain seller stares at the ground. A boy nearby asks his mother what happened. She answers loudly enough for the merchant to hear. This may be the true punishment. A town does not need parchment records when every neighbor remembers your embarrassment. No one can quite agree whether public shame truly prevents dishonesty or simply produces better hidden dishonesty. You suspect both. Near the market cross, a clerk opens a small book. His fingers are stained with ink. Someone accused of breaking a market rule may be summoned before a local court, where oaths and testimony carry serious weight. Swearing an oath is not merely a legal formality in a deeply religious society. To swear falsely can place the soul at risk. That belief gives testimony a spiritual weight difficult to separate from law. A man beside you whispers that no sensible person would lie while touching holy relics. The suspicious monk now standing nearby gives him a look suggesting experience has taught otherwise. Some disputes can involve oath helpers or compurgators, people willing to swear to someone's character or credibility under certain legal customs. It sounds strange to you, yet reputation is crucial where documents are fewer and communities tightly connected. If respected neighbors swear that you are trustworthy, their word may matter. If half the market knows you as the man who sells rotten onions, your afternoon becomes harder. The constables begin moving through the lanes. One asks merchants whether they saw the fleeing thief. Another checks a narrow alley. The dog strains toward the passage. You hold him back. His heroic career has reached its daily limit. Pickpockets are not the only concern. Goods vanish from stalls. Weights are tampered with. Counterfeit coins circulate. Animals are misrepresented. Food is adulterated. A seller may place good fruit on top of a basket and bruised fruit beneath. A cloth dealer may stretch fabric before measurement. A money changer may claim foreign silver is worth less than it really is. The market is a school of tiny deceptions. It is also a school of people learning to recognize them. Customers squeeze smell way, compare question and bargain because trust has limits. You think again of the fishwife pressing a thumb into a herring. Perhaps suspicion is a survival skill. At one stall, an official inspects a set of weights against town standards. The merchant watches carefully. Standard weights may be kept by civic or market authorities precisely. So disputes can be checked against something everyone recognizes. The system is not perfect. Officials themselves can be corrupt. Standards can differ between towns, and a clever cheat can behave honestly whenever the inspector is nearby. Some swear that dishonest traders keep two sets of measures, one for ordinary buyers and one for officials. Whether this is common practice or market legend is difficult to know. The story survives because everyone finds it believable. A church bell sounds beyond the rooftops. The market crowd has begun thinning slightly. The alleged thief has not been found. The woman has her purse back, though the strap is ruined. She thanks the constable. Then she thanks the dog again. He receives another scrap of food. You receive nothing. Justice has clear favorites. Near the pillory, the grain seller is being led away after paying part of his penalty. Tomorrow people will remember. Next week they will still remember. By next season the story may have grown until he is accused of cheating half the county. This is how reputations live. You leave the market, cross behind, and follow a broad road leading towards the outer gate, where carts are beginning to gather for a larger journey. Merchants talk of a seasonal fair beyond the town walls, a place where foreign traders, distant goods, special privileges and temporary courts draw crowds far greater than this ordinary market can hold. The cracked cart is there too, its wheel is still creaking, you sigh. The dog trots beside you. And together you follow the merchants toward the road beyond the gate. Beyond the gate, the road widens into a churned ribbon of mud, lined with hedges, carts, pilgrims, drovers, and merchants whose patience has been worn thin by travel. You follow them slowly. The dog trots beside you with the confidence of an animal now convinced that every town contains sausage praise and opportunities for public heroism. Ahead, the cracked cart complains at every rut, its damaged wheel making a wooden groan that has become oddly familiar. The ordinary market fades behind you. Ahead lies something larger, a seasonal fair. These fairs can transform open ground outside a town or near an abbey into temporary worlds of trade. Some are held annually on feast days, others last several days or even weeks. Merchants arrive from distant regions carrying goods rarely seen in weekly markets. The first tents appear beyond a meadow. Canvas awnings stretch in long rows. Pack horses stand tethered beside wagons. Smoke rises from cooking fires. Voices carry in unfamiliar accents. The fair feels less like a village square and more like a temporary town built overnight. You pause at the entrance while an official checks a merchant's papers. Fairs may operate under special privileges granted by kings, lords, bishops, or monasteries. Certain traders can receive safe conduct protections, temporary freedom from some ordinary tolls, or access to legal arrangements designed specifically for the fair. Naturally, none of this prevents someone from charging another fee somewhere else. Medieval commerce has a remarkable talent for discovering fees. You step inside. The difference is immediate. At the weekly market, most goods came from nearby farms, workshops, rivers, or surrounding villages. Here merchandise has travelled much farther. Bundles of fine cloth lie beneath guarded awnings. Barrels of wine stand beside imported spices. Furs are stacked near metal goods. Leather wax, dyes, salt, dried fish grain. Pottery tools and luxury objects form strange neighbouring landscapes. A merchant from another region unwraps a packet of pepper. The scent is sharp enough to cut through horse sweat and wood smoke. Pepper is valuable not because medieval people use it to disguise rotten meat, as a stubborn later myth likes to claim, but because imported spices are desirable, prestigious, and expensive. No sensible, wealthy household needs to ruin costly pepper by pouring it over meat already too spoiled to eat. Even medieval extravagance has limits. You move beneath a line of awnings and hear languages you do not recognize. Some traders communicate through interpreters. Others rely on gestures, repeated numbers, coins held up between fingers, and the universal facial expression, meaning that the proposed price is an insult to civilization. Long-distance trade creates practical problems. Different currencies, different measures, different customs, different legal expectations. A merchant who understands how to move between these systems can profit handsomely. A merchant who does not may discover that his excellent bargain was only excellent for the other man. You pass a table where a money changer has returned to your life. This one has larger scales, more coin types, and 2 guards nearby. You keep walking. Experience is a form of education. Near the center of the fair stands a temporary court. A clerk sits behind a rough table with parchment ink and a box of documents. Merchants gather nearby to settle disputes. Fairs often need swift justice because traders cannot remain in town for months waiting for an ordinary case to be heard. Special fair courts can handle debts, broken contracts, theft, disputed goods and other commercial problems quickly. In England, some such tribunals later become known as courts of pie powder, a term connected to dusty feet. The image is appropriate. Everyone here has dusty feet when the road is dry and muddy feet when it is not. The court hears a complaint involving damaged cloth. One merchant claims the fabric became wet during transport. The buyer claims it was already spoiled. The clerk examines both men with the expression of someone who has spent years discovering that every wet cloth has at least 3 histories. No one can quite agree whether temporary fair justice is always fair, but it is fast. For travelling merchants, speed matters. Nearby a bell hangs from a wooden frame. It marks moments of opening-closing proclamation and public order, much as the town bell did earlier. You realize how deeply bells organize this world. They wake monks, call worshippers, warn towns, open markets, close fairs, mark danger, measure days for people who do not own clocks. A single sound can tell hundreds of strangers when to move. You continue toward merchant lodging. Some wealthy traders rent rooms in inns or houses. Others sleep in temporary shelters near their goods. Servants guard wagons at night. Pack animals remain close. Security becomes serious after dark. A merchant carrying valuable cloth or silver cannot simply leave it unattended beside a hedge and trust in Christian goodwill. Watchfires are already being prepared. Bundles of wood lie beside shallow pits. Men stack barrels and chests beneath coverings. One merchant checks 3 locks before walking away, then returns and checks them again. You understand him. Near the edge of the fair stands a small chapel. Travel and trade do not suspend devotion. Merchants attend mass, make offerings, visit nearby shrines, and ask protection for journeys. A trader pins a pilgrim badge to his cloak. You recognize the same design you saw in town. Perhaps it came from the same suspicious seller. The dog sniffs it. Spiritual authentication remains beyond his abilities. Beside the chapel door hangs a cluster of small wax offerings, shaped like hands, feet, animals, and other forms. People sometimes give wax representations connected with prayers for healing or gratitude. A horse-shaped offering catches your attention. Some swear that merchants travelling with valuable animals leave such tokens to ask a saint for protection from lameness, thieves, or bad roads. Considering the roads, you find this understandable. The cracked cart finally arrives. Its wheel survives the journey. The driver looks triumphant, then the axle creaks. you decide not to become emotionally involved. As afternoon softens toward evening, cooking fires multiply. The fare becomes warmer in color. Iron pots hang over flames. Bread is cut. Ale is poured. Smoked fish appears again because apparently you are never truly free of herring. Foreign merchants eat beside local craftsmen. Pilgrims share benches with drovers. A man from far away tells a story about a city whose walls are white as bone. No one nearby has seen it. Everyone listens. Seasonal fairs do more than exchange goods. They exchange rumors, fashions, songs, techniques, prices, stories, and ideas. A new buckle design may appear here first. A strange spice becomes fashionable. A distant war changes wool prices. A merchant hears of better roads. A pilgrim hears of a new shrine. Commerce carries information wherever carts can travel. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. How much ordinary people understand about these distant networks? Perhaps they do not need to understand everything. A wool seller only needs to know that this year's buyer is paying less. A spice merchant only needs to know that ships were delayed. A farmer only needs to know that strangers have arrived with silver. The larger pattern forms quietly from thousands of smaller decisions. The sun drops lower. Watchmen begin moving through the fair. Torches are lit. Merchants draw canvas over expensive goods. The chapel bell rings. You sit beside a roadside fire with coarse bread in one hand and the lavender packet still tucked safely at your belt. The dog curls near your boots. Beyond the flames, the cracked cart stands in silhouette. For the first time all day, its wheel is silent. Around you, voices soften. Tomorrow, bargaining will begin again. But tonight, beneath the smoke and torchlight of the temporary fair, you simply watch strangers settle beside guarded storehouses while the road grows dark beyond the watchfires. The watchfire settles into a bed of orange coals while you finish the last piece of coarse bread. For a little while, you remain beside it with the dog curled against your boots, listening to the fair change its voice. The daytime shouting has weakened. Merchants no longer call loudly across the lanes. Horses lower their heads. Canvas awnings flap softly in the evening breeze, and somewhere behind a line of wagons a tired man is trying to persuade an equally tired mule that 3 more steps would improve both of their lives. The mule disagrees. Then the closing bell sounds. Its first note carries above the tents and watchfires deep enough to make several conversations stop at once. A second follows. Throughout, the fair hands begin gathering goods. The change is not immediate. Medieval markets rarely transform from business to silence in a single moment. Instead, trade enters its final, slightly desperate stage. This is when bargains become interesting. A woman selling onions does not want to carry every basket home. A baker would rather sell yesterday's remaining loaves than discover tomorrow that they have become suitable building materials. Fish sellers face an even greater problem. Fresh food has a clock ticking inside it. You watch one merchant reduce the price of several smoked fish while another bundles bruised apples into a single cheap lot. Customers who waited all afternoon now return with the calm confidence of people who know that time is bargaining on their behalf. A woman points at a basket of turnips. The seller names a price. She shakes her head. He lowers it. She shakes her head again. He looks at the darkening sky. The price falls once more. You admire her patience. At this hour, patience is almost currency. Some goods can be stored easily. Grain, cloth, metalware, salt, and pottery may wait for another day, if kept dry and guarded. Others cannot. Milk sours, fish spoils, cooked dishes cool, soft fruit bruises. A seller may prefer a poor price to no price at all. The dog discovers this principle before you do. A cook gives him a piece of meat that clearly has no commercial future. He accepts it with dignity. Around the stalls, merchants begin sweeping or gathering whatever remains. Loose straw has become dark beneath countless boots. Onion skins cling to puddles. Broken feathers lie beside scraps of string. A cabbage leaf is pressed flat into the mud like an unfortunate green manuscript. The clean morning square you remember now seems very far away. Market waste is a constant problem. Town regulations may order sellers to remove refuse or restrict where slaughter, waste, spoiled food ash and dung can be dumped. The rules are sensible. The streets are not always evidence that anyone follows them enthusiastically. A servant pushes debris into a basket. Another man pushes debris toward his neighbor's stall. His neighbor pushes it back. Municipal sanitation has reached an impasse. You move slowly toward the gate. The cracked cart is being loaded again. Its driver has tied another strip of leather around the damaged wheel. You stare at it. The driver notices. It held his expression, seems to say. Technically, he is correct. The horse pulling it appears less optimistic. Its coat is dark with sweat beneath the harness and its head hangs low. After a full market day, animals are as exhausted as people. Pack horses have stood beneath loads. Oxen have pulled carts through mud. Mules have been shouted at by men who somehow believe louder instructions improve animal philosophy. Stable hands now loosen girths, check hooves, offer water, and rub tired legs. Practical care matters after long travel, so do old habits. At one tethering post, a man rubs an herb mixture onto a horse's leg before touching a little iron charm hanging from the harness. Some swear that an animal brought safely through a crowded fair should not have its protective charm removed until it reaches its own stable. Whether the charm protects the horse or simply reassures the owner is impossible to know. The horse seems most interested in hay. Another bell sounds from the town beyond the meadow. This one is different. Curfew approaches. The word itself comes from customs associated with covering fires at night when open flames inside crowded timber towns pose a serious danger. In some places, evening bells signal that fires should be banked. Streets quieted, gates prepared for closure, or nighttime restrictions observed. A medieval town after dark is not simply the daytime town with fewer customers. Movement becomes suspicious. Doors close, shutters drop, watchmen appear. Anyone wandering too late may be asked where they are going and why. You decide. Being able to answer following a dog would not improve your case. So you turn toward the gate while there is still time. Behind the merchant, rows guard secure storehouses. Heavy oak doors close over cloth, wax, spices, tools, and grain. Iron keys turn in locks. Chests are pushed away from windows. Valuable goods may be guarded overnight by servants or watchmen, especially during a large fair filled with strangers. A merchant counts coins inside a canvas-sided booth. He has arranged them into little piles beneath a beeswax candle. Beside him sits an ink-stained clerk recording figures. The candle has burned halfway down. You think of the candle at the roadside shrine before dawn. So much of the day seems measured by the disappearing wax. Elsewhere, merchants settle accounts with partners. Debts are noted, tallies are checked, missing coins are discussed with suspicion. A good day must still be counted before anyone knows it was good. Some traders keep records in counting rooms or private chambers away from the busiest stalls. Larger merchants may depend on clerks capable of tracking credit across long distances. One wrong number can follow a trader from fair to fair. No one can quite agree whether medieval merchants sleep better after counting their money or worse. Judging from the man checking his chest lock for the 4th time, you have an answer. You pass through the town gate before it closes. Inside the market square is almost empty. The transformation surprises you. Stalls that seemed permanent only hours ago have vanished into boards and folded cloth. Shutters are closed. A few merchants remain under lantern light packing baskets. The abandoned straw is damp and flattened. A broken spoon lies near the market cross. Nobody wants it. Even the dog ignores it. From an alehouse comes warmth, yellow light, and voices. Merchants who argued over pennies all day now sit shoulder to shoulder drinking from wooden cups. Drovers warm their hands near the hearth. Apprentices laugh quietly. Someone tells the story of the runaway pig. It has already become faster. The dog has already become larger. By tomorrow you suspect it will involve a bishop. You stand near the doorway long enough to feel the heat. Rushes cover the alehouse floor. Smoke hangs beneath soot-black rafters. Wet cloaks steam beside the fire, and bowls of thick pottage pass along a bench. For a moment you could stay, but another curfew bell rolls through the streets. Outside doors are closing one by one. You step back into the colder air. The dog follows. Behind you, laughter continues beneath the rafters. Ahead, the market cross rises alone beneath the dim sky. The square that held hundreds of voices now contains only the scrape of a broom, the distant footsteps of a watchman, and the last soft clink of an iron key turning somewhere behind an oak door. You cross the square beneath a sky that has finally surrendered its last grey light. The market cross stands where it stood at dawn, but without awnings, shouting sellers, geese baskets, or bargaining voices around it. The stone seems older. Rain has darkened its base. Candle wax has hardened in pale ridges near a carved niche. Someone has tucked a withered sprig of rosemary into a crack, perhaps as an offering, perhaps as a charm, perhaps simply because there was nowhere else to put it. The dog sniffs the rosemary and decides against eating it. This may be his wisest decision all day. A watchman approaches carrying a lantern and a staff. His steps strike slowly against the stones. He pauses near shuttered stalls, checks one oak door, then another, and listens before moving on. Night watch is one of the quieter forms of market regulation. Goods remain behind locked doors. Grain sits in storehouses. Cloth lies folded inside chests. Tools hang in workshops whose fires have been carefully banked. A town that spent daylight encouraging trade must spend darkness protecting what trade has left behind. The watchman reaches the market cross and raises his lantern. Its light catches a coin lying near the base. He bends, picks it up, and turns it between his fingers. Some swear that finding a coin near a market cross after closing is lucky, while others insist that money left beside sacred stone should not be taken, because it may have been offered deliberately. No one can quite agree which belief is older. The watchman considers the coin, then places it into the niche beside the rosemary. Apparently, he prefers not to test either possibility. You continue across the square. Markets repeat themselves. Weekly market days give rural households a rhythm. Seasonal fairs mark larger turns of the year. Harvest changes what fills baskets. Winter changes what must be stored. Lent changes what appears on tables. Saints' days can determine when fairs are held, church bells announce hours, and pilgrims create demand for food, lodging, badges, candles, and souvenirs. Even trade has holy days, and holy days have merchants. The suspicious monk appears one final time beneath a covered passage. He carries his smoked fish parcel under one arm and the questionable pilgrim badge in the other hand. Apparently, the seller finally persuaded him to purchase it, or perhaps the monk bought it as evidence. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. He notices the dog reaches into his parcel and drops a small piece of fish onto the stone. Your companion swallows it immediately. So ends the great theological dispute. The monk disappears toward the Abbey Road. At the end of the street stands the roadside shrine you passed before dawn. The same candle burns inside its stone recess, though only a short stump remains. Beside it lie 3 coins a button, a scrap of blue thread, and a pilgrim token. People have passed through all day, leaving small pieces of hope behind. A merchant asks for profit, a traveller asks for safety, a drover asks that his animals survive the road. Someone may simply ask not to lose another boot in the mud. Medieval devotion can be grand inside cathedrals, but it is often small here. a touched stone, a whispered prayer, a candle bought with 1 coin, a charm tied near a stable door. You stand. The dog lies against your boots. Behind you the market bell is silent. The cracked cart has gone. The money changer has locked away his silver. The fishwife has covered her boards. The alewife has emptied her last cup. The guildmasters have closed their shutters. The strange facts of the market no longer feel strange. They feel like fragments of ordinary lives. Weights checked before breakfast, coins bitten beneath an awning, herbs tied with thread, geese carried in baskets, guild marks carved into wood, pilgrim badges pinned to cloaks, a widow remembering a debt, a watchman leaving a found coin beside a shrine. The candle bends in the wind. You pull your cloak closer and begin walking beyond the gate. The road is pale beneath the moon, and frost settles softly along the grass. Your steps become slower. The dog stays beside you without needing to be called. Far behind, one last monastery bell marks the hour, but you no longer count the strokes. Your hands are warmer inside your sleeves now. The lavender packet still rests at your belt. You imagine placing it beneath a rough wool pillow in some small guest house ahead where rushes lie across the floor and a beeswax candle burns low beside an oak bed. There will be no bargaining there, no scales, no toll keeper, no merchant insisting that his horse is 6. Only a blanket, a dark ceiling, and the soft, settling sounds of an old building growing still. The market town recedes until its walls become a darker line against the night, and then even that begins to fade. The bells soften, the road softens. The world narrows to your breathing, the faint warmth of your cloak and the steady companionship of a dog padding quietly through the frost. Nothing more is required of you tonight. The stalls will open again without you. Bread will be weighed. Bells will ring. Someone will argue over onions. Someone will find a bargain. Someone will leave a coin beside a saint. But you can let all of it drift away now. The watchfires are low. The shutters are closed. The horses are sleeping. Cold stone rests beneath a quiet sky, and the last candle behind the town wall becomes no more than a golden point in the distance. You breathe slowly. The old road stretches ahead, silver beneath the moon, but there is no need to hurry along it. Your cloak is warm enough, your footsteps are soft enough. Even the dog has stopped searching the hedges and simply walks beside you. Soon there is only frost darkness and the memory of market bells fading across sleeping fields. You let the day loosen its hold. You let the coins, voices, carts, saint scales, animals, awnings, and muddy footprints disappear one by one. And beneath the dark medieval sky, everything grows still enough to carry you gently toward rest.